Don't know yet if Minister Blanchette-Vizina will keep our portfolio or if there will be a new minister.
Tonight, ahead of a cabinet shuffle in Quebec, the AFNQL is calling for Bill 97 to be withdrawn.
For the Mi'kmaq of Gaspégoagé, it means taking control of development of wind on their territory.
A major wind energy partnership in Quebec.
We were grateful at one point when we were receiving Jordan's Principle funding. However, with the changes across Canada due to Jordan's Principle funding, we do not have Jordan's Principle funding anymore.
And a Manitoba mother is looking to raise money to help with her daughter's care, who lives with a rare medical condition. Tanse natutemak TR Wheatley Nisigasun Opasqueacoche. Tawau, welcome to APTN National News. The Hollow Water First Nation is still reeling after 8 residents were stabbed on Thursday morning, resulting in the death of a young woman. A candlelight vigil and walk was held earlier today by the community school in honor of the victims, survivors, and their families. Media was not allowed to attend the event 160 kilometers northeast of Winnipeg. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew was in the First Nation over the weekend, providing his condolences to the community of roughly 1,000 residents. 18-year-old Marina Samard died after her brother Tyrone Samard, 26, stabbed her and 7 others known to him Thursday morning. All were transported to hospital, where 4 people have since been discharged as of Sunday. Manitoba's Shared Health says they expect the rest will be discharged in the coming days. Tyrone died fleeing the community in a collision with an RCMP cruiser. A group of protesters gathered in Sault Ste. Marie to demonstrate against Ontario's Bill 5 and the Government of Canada's Bill C5. The provincial and federal legislation is designed to fast-track mineral exploration and development, but critics say the bills do so at the expense of treaty rights and the environment. APTN's Mike McDonald reports.
People over profit, water over oil!
People over profit, water over oil!
People over profit, water over oil!
The demonstration against Bill 5 and Bill C5 was organized by the Sault Ste. Marie Indigenous Friendship Centre, an unusual action as friendship centres have traditionally been nonpartisan. The executive director of the Sioux Friendship Centre says while she still considers her organization as nonpartisan, it has a duty to advocate on behalf of urban Indigenous people.
Urban Indigenous are a real population of people, and they don't have anybody else to advocate and support them. They don't even get their services from their own First Nation, so they have the Friendship Center. And we have to come together like this and advocate and support our people.
One of the protesters taking part in the demonstration is Atreo Lewis, who is also part of the Bill 5 encampment at Queen's Park this summer.
I think it's really getting everyone out here and getting engaged with the issue. I'm grateful to be flown out here with the IFC. I think it's great, engaging, it gets people talking, gets people motivated, and I hope to educate more today while I'm here.
Carson Kiosk, a local hunter, says the bills will have a dramatic impact on Indigenous hunting and fishing rights.
These lands are protected by treaties that go back further than my grandparents, and I find it hard to believe that they can do something like this and push this stuff onto these areas.
Other protesters called on First Nations leadership to fight against the bills.
We need to be heard and something needs to be done about this bill because it's only going to cause more harm to our land and our animals and our rights. So I'm really looking forward to seeing more people come together and protest and our leaders stand up and use their voice to make sure that they inspire everyone to come together.
We have to stop Bill C5 and we need the support of the Chiefs of Ontario as well as Anishinaabe Nation, as well as our chiefs and councils. We cannot move ahead until we do that.
Around 30 people took part in the demonstration. No word on whether further protests will be organized. Mike McDonald, APTN National News, Sault Ste. Marie.
In a press release earlier today, the Assembly of First Nations Quebec Labrador called on the Government of Quebec to completely withdraw Bill 97. AFN-QL had requested that the Quebec government, in rewriting the bill, respect their ancestral and treaty rights, establish genuine co-management of forests, and to completely withdraw the priority forest management zoning. After several months of discussions and good faith exchanges, the AFN-QL Chiefs Committee on Forests have concluded that there is no guarantee that the proposal of the First Nations would be integrated into a significantly amended version of Bill 97. They added that, therefore, it would be impossible for them to keep working with the government despite some recent signs of openness. Regional Chief Francis Veyreau Paul says the uncertainty and unpredictability of the political situation in Quebec, including tomorrow's cabinet reshuffle, presents a perfect opportunity for the government to restart the development of the forestry regime in partnership with them.
We don't know yet if Minister Blanchette-Vizina will keep our portfolio, or if there will be a new minister. Also, we hear some echoes that there might be a prorogation of the assembly, which means that they might just start off to zero, and it could mean that the forestry regime, the bill, could just be pulled away from their plan. So because of all of these reasons, I think it's an opportunity for the Quebec government to restart.
A shooting in the community of Fort McPherson, Northwest Territories has left one teenager injured but in stable condition. On Sunday, September 7th, RCMP received a report of shots fired in the community on Charles Cole Road. Officers found and attended to a 14-year-old victim with a gunshot wound. The teen was transported to the health center and later outside the community for treatment. They are reported to be in stable condition. The investigation remains ongoing and no arrests have been made. Anyone with information on the incident can contact Fort McPherson RCMP. Some good news for wildfire evacuees in the Northwest Territories came over the weekend as residents in one community were able to return home. After 8 days of being under an evacuation order, the Wati community government announced on social media that it was finally safe for evacuees to return home. Essential workers returned first on September 5th, while the rest of the community re-entered on September 6th. Although the immediate threat has passed, wildfire crews are still on site performing mop-up operations and maintaining fire break perimeters to keep the community safe. Since July 11th, the 181 employees of the Rio Tinto Sorel Tracy powder plant have been on an indefinite strike. Some of their demands go beyond wage issues. APTN Stephanie DeSev met with an Indigenous employee and his daughters who also want cultural recognition.
The employees of this iron and titanium complex are unhappy with Rio Tinto. Chagabes Jérôme, who has clocked in to work for the past 29 years, is now on strike. He and his co-workers are asking for a comparable salary with the neighboring factory, which was recently bought by Rio Tinto, the very company they work for. 98% of the employees refused Rio Tinto's so-called final offer. The negotiations are presently at a standstill.
Dans mon point de vue, je trouve ça un gros manque de respect de ne pas vouloir discuter, de ne pas vouloir négocier, de ne pas vouloir s'asseoir avec nous autres puis parler. Moi, j'ai mes deux filles qui travaillent avec nous ici.
Jérôme is Innu from the community of Washat Makmani Utanam. He would also like Rio Tinto to recognize the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation as a public holiday.
Nos parents, ma mère, mes oncles, mes tantes ont été dans les pensionnats. Puis cette journée-là, Vérité-Réconciliation, elle vient carrément dire, bien, pour faire une réconciliation, il faut avoir la vérité. Puis la vérité, c'est que nos parents ont vécu le génocide culturel, ont vécu cet outil-là de répression, ont vécu l'isolement, ont vécu les sévices sexuels, les abus physiques, tu sais. Fait que ça a brisé nos parents, puis ça les a changés complètement. Ils n'ont pas pu être les parents qui auraient dû être, qui auraient pu devenir.
Jérôme is not the only one who wants to highlight the importance of this day. His daughters, who work with him, believe in it just as much.
Ça n'a pas été en fait assez éduqué à l'école, bien expliqué, donc ça devrait être reconnu comme un férié.
September 30th is as important for Letitia's sister, Maïka.
Saint-Jean-Baptiste, c'est des fêtes, tout le monde en parle, tout le monde le sait. Mais pourquoi le 30, c'est pas une journée comme ça?
Force, solidarité, respect!
Many Indigenous workers across the country have similar stories like this father and his daughters, who are fighting to improve their working conditions.
Ben, on est content d'être ici, justement, de pouvoir se battre pour nos droits avec notre père en famille.
C'est pour les années à venir qu'on fait ce combat-là. On le fait pour mes enfants puis pour les autres générations.
Stéphanie Desèvres, APTN National News, Sorel-Tracy.
We want to hear what you think about our stories tonight. Here's how to continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. You can find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Time for a quick break, but first here's Ryan Cunningham in Vancouver to tell us what he's working on this week.
Tansei, I'm Ryan Cunningham in the downtown east side of Vancouver, where we're here celebrating a new ultrasound sensor that's going to be in the TELUS mobile clinic helping people on the downtown east side. We'll have more for you tomorrow on APTN National News.
Pitigwe. A Manitoba mother is trying to raise money to help cover the expenses of her daughter's medical care, a rare genetic disorder called Pura syndrome that affects less than 800 people worldwide. The family was previously receiving funding from Jordan's principal, but that was recently cut off. With more, here's our Dennis Ward.
Learning to walk for Jacob Aurora was no easy feat. At 2.5 years old, she was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder.
Pura syndrome's rare. There's only 2 kids in Manitoba that have Pura syndrome.
Her mother, Elizabeth Siebrecht, says her daughter faces global development delays, such as troubles with feeding, walking, and speaking, and issues with her lungs.
We don't live in Winnipeg, and we have to commute to Winnipeg for her appointments.
Siebrecht says Jacob Aurora's costs average close to $6,000 a month for occupational therapy, physiotherapy, speech and education therapy, along with transportation to their daily appointments with specialists. And up until recently, they were covered.
We were grateful at one point when we were receiving Jordan's principal funding. However, with the changes across Canada due to Jordan's principal funding, we do not have Jordan's principal funding anymore.
At the start of 2025, the federal government made changes to Jordan's principal. As Jacob Aurora and her mother live off reserve, they are no longer covered. Siebrecht credits Jordan's principal for helping her daughters walking and reaching other major milestones.
We've tried some government funding, however, that hasn't worked out for us very well where we live, because I live in the country near Steinbach area.
Now she's turned to GoFundMe to help cover the costs.
I'm hoping to raise funds for transportation so we could commute to the city Monday to Friday for her educational therapy, speech therapy, physiotherapy, and occupational therapy.
Siebrecht knows the odds are against her, as most children with Pura syndrome are unable to talk, but she remains hopeful that with continued therapy, Jacob Aurora will have the chance to talk one day, just like she's now been able to see her daughter walk. This isn't the first time that Siebrecht has had to hold on to hope. 10 years ago, her other daughter, Alexis, who was 11 years old at the time, was anxiously awaiting a live liver donor. Alexis was diagnosed with a rare and sometimes fatal liver disease at the age of 3 months. She received a liver donation from a confidential donor at the time and is now healthy, married, and a mother herself. Dennis Ward, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The Mi'kmaq of Gaspé-Guwagi announced a major wind energy development partnership with Alliance de l'Est and Hydro-Québec. As Kim Sullivan reports, despite the region being familiar with wind energy projects, this partnership is a game changer.
This unprecedented partnership aims to assess the potential for wind power development on the traditional territory of the Gaspé, Gisgapigiag, and Listugush, which are the shareholders of the MMBC, Mi'kmaq Mawiomi Business Corporation. MMBC CEO Fred Vicaire says that this is not the first wind energy project in the Gaspé Peninsula and eastern Bas-Saint-Laurent of Quebec, but that this one is certainly different.
This is huge, though. This is another scheme. It's 6,000 megawatts of different projects that will get created. That's the misconception. A lot of people think it's one big project. It's not. It will be a variety of different projects that will be created on the traditional territory. But from the get-go, people will get consulted in our communities to make sure that these projects where we're looking to create them are accepted by community members.
This project is part of the Quebec government and Hydro-Quebec's energy strategy to develop more than 10,000 megawatts of new wind power capacity by 2035. This partnership will generate stable, long-term revenue for the three communities and marks a decisive moment in energy and economic reconciliation.
For the Mi'kmaq of Gaspé-Guwagi, it means taking control of development of wind on their territory. So no longer developers coming in and doing projects and then asking if we want to be partners. We're actually at the forefront and developing projects on our traditional territory from the get-go, right from the beginning.
One thing is certain, the wind is blowing strong on the energy future of the Gaspé-Guwagi. Kim Sullivan, APTN National News, Montreal.
Time for one last break here. When we come back, we tell you about some initiatives happening ahead of National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Cheskwa. Tawau, welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Not sure how common this sight is, but it sure seems pretty amazing. A close-up look at a pod of transient killer whales just passing through Victoria, British Columbia's inner harbor. Thanks to Malachi for the great shot. For the chance to be our next photo of the day, send your pictures to share at aptn.ca. Now, let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, Charlottetown 20, Halifax 19. Kuujjuaq 11, Nain 7. Chibougamau 14, Val-d'Or 15. North Bay 21, Sarnia 24. Big Trout Lake 11, Timmins 16. Thompson 21, The Paw 25. Barons River 22, Brandon 28. North Battleford 30, Regina 28. Uranium City 19, La Ronge 24. Moving west, Peace River 25, Grande Prairie 27. Edmonton 30, Calgary 23. Kamloops 30, Vancouver 19. Dease Lake 15, Smithers 21. Old Crow 11, Beaver Creek 16. Norman Wells 17, Trout Lake 16. Tuktoyaktuk 7, Fort McPherson 10. Cambridge Bay 8, Chesterfield 9. Arctic Bay 0, Iqaluit 6. In honor of the 10th anniversary of the final report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the MasterCard Foundation announced in a press release a $235 million donation for post-secondary education on Tuesday. The money will go towards post-secondary institutions working to improve educational outcomes for Indigenous youth and are engaged in Indigenous communities and offer programs that include Indigenous priorities. A total of $55 million will go to 4 national Indigenous organizations, including $25 million for the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. 10 Indigenous post-secondary institutions will receive $10 million each, including the First Nations University of Canada. 16 mainstream post-secondary institutions will get $5 million each. First Nations University of Canada President Jacqueline Ottman had this to say about her institution's donation.
This is very momentous for First Nations University of Canada to receive $10 million of funding that is essentially unrestricted for us, so we get to dream and plan for the future in relation to sustainability and supporting our students.
The Winnipeg IKEA staff held a survivor flag raising ceremony this morning to recognize National Day for Truth and Reconciliation later this month. Workers at the store have been dedicating time to learn about the history of Indigenous culture and to educate themselves on residential schools. Julia Ross attended the ceremony and has more.
Here at Winnipeg, I think we are extremely proud that we finally are able to raise the flag and show everyone how we feel.
Edward Budd raised the survivor's flag Tuesday morning during the IKEA staff's ceremony. He says he held his history with him as he raised the flag.
I just thought of my family, my ancestors. My mother, she went to a residential school. She was in Guy Hill, and a lot of painful stories, so I kept them in mind.
Andrea Drylick, IKEA Winnipeg's Communications and Interior Designs Manager, has been an advocate for truth and reconciliation in the store. She's been helping to build programs and action plans for the past 2 years. Leading up to the Survivor Flag ceremony, Drylick says staff took training to learn the history of residential schools, as not all workers had the opportunity to learn Indigenous history in school.
Making sure our coworker base understands the history of Manitoba and the history in our community. At IKEA, one of our visions is to make sure everyone is comfortable here. Our home is your home, and we want to make sure everyone in our community feels welcome.
The flag raising was one of many opportunities that IKEA has organized to bring coworkers together and provide a deeper connection to Indigenous stories.
Hearing our stories of our community, of the pain and the loss, it's extremely impactful both for our coworkers who've been impacted, but those who haven't, just being able to understand what is happening in our community has been really important to us.
I really appreciate the effort that everyone has put into this. And I would say this is a good acknowledgement of residential school history and the people, but I think it's also good for any people that's been oppressed, and I think it's a good thing. I think that's part of why people are here, because we have a lot of people from all over the world and come from very difficult backgrounds.
Julia Ross, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And that's your APTN National News for this Tuesday, September 9th. Mino Niso Gisagaw Anuts, I'm TR Wheatley. It's been a pleasure to be here with you. Join us again tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. Until then, from all of us at APTN, Egasi, Gitam, Kawapamitinanaw.